How's it going, sports fans, and welcome back to Southpaw Sports. Today I have our first non-card opening video. We have a NFL mock draft for this upcoming draft here in April. Figured I wanted to get one of these out right now after the Stafford Goff trade just happened, and I want to make sure that before any other big trades happen, I get my first mock draft up. I plan on doing multiple throughout the spring here as teams make trades and make cuts, and so their needs will become different and their draft picks will become different as well. So, without further ado, we'll hop right into this. This one will be just the first round and no trades. I will probably do another one with trades later on, but to keep things easy for the first one, we are not going to do any trades. So, starting out, you have the Jaguars. At number one, I don't really think this is going to be a question. Your biggest need is obviously quarterback. They have Trevor Lawrence on the board. I don't think it's that close between him and the other quarterbacks, no matter what some people have said. I think they are going to go right ahead and just go take Trevor Lawrence, so we're not going to spend too much time on this one. Pick number two, you have the Jets. And the Jets are an interesting one just because they do need a quarterback potentially as well here. Obviously, they have Darnold still, but it's looking more and more like they're not going to keep him. And if they truly don't keep him, or even if they want to keep him kind of as their backup or like a bridge quarterback, I think it would be really smart for them here to draft a quarterback if they stay at this pick. This is also a good spot for them where if they are thinking of going with Darnold or if they don't potentially want the second overall pick on the board, they could definitely trade back and get some more picks in return, which they definitely could use plenty of picks. But like I said, no trades in this draft, and I think that the second best quarterback on the field is fairly close here between Fields and Wilson, but I'm going to go ahead and give them Wilson. I think he has the higher ceiling of the two. I think he's more of the sure thing. I think that Fields reminds me a little bit almost of like a Dwayne Haskins, but not quite as much as him, where he's got a lot of talent and potential, but he's not quite as polished, and I think he makes too many mistakes. I think they're going to look at Zach Wilson and think that that's their guy, so I'm going to go ahead and give him there. Pick number three, the Dolphins definitely are in a better spot here than these first two teams. They have a quarterback currently, but there is talk that they might be looking to either ship Tua or move off of Tua already, which I think would be foolish of them. I think they should ride with Tua here for at least another year. Put a little more team around him, see how he does, then make a decision from there. But for the moments, I think that their biggest need, I do agree with. Over here, it shows you the team needs. I do agree with this website's idea here that wide receiver is their biggest need, and there's two really good ones on the board here. With Ja'Marr Chase, who's an absolute crazy receiver in the field, and Devontae Smith as well. Both of them would be great additions. I really think that they are extremely close as far as which one is the better receiver for this draft class. But for the sake that Tua was the Alabama QB and he's played with Smith, I'm going to go ahead and give them Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner. I think that Tua will be comfortable with him. It'll really help him grow as a quarterback to have a guy that he's familiar with on that offense. So I think that is going to be their best move. The Falcons, Len, are another team where they get really interesting, where they need a lot of defensive help. But they also need a good QB to replace Ryan eventually, because it sounds like the kind of general gist of how the team is going is that they're planning to move off of Ryan, probably not this year, but in a year or two here. Whether that means through a trade or once his contract is up, that's to be seen. But I do think that they will be looking at a QB potentially with this number 4 overall pick, because who knows if they'll be this high up next year or the year after that with a good quarterback still on the board. So this is where I think I will go ahead and I will give them Justin Fields. I think Fields, like I said, is a guy that he's a little bit raw in certain areas, and he definitely needs just a little bit of help. I think being able to sit behind Matt Ryan for a year or two before getting his full starting job would be very beneficial for him, and also for the Falcons to have a guy for the future. As much as they need some defensive help right now, I think Fields is the pick to go for them. At number 5, I think this one is another no-brainer. I think debatably, outside of Lawrence, Penei Sewell is the best player on this draft board. He is a amazing offensive lineman, and if you didn't watch any Bengals games this last year, Burrow took a lot of big hits, and obviously he got hurt from it as well. They need to protect Burrow. And as much as they might, like it says there, need a wide receiver as well for Burrow, especially with Adrian Green potentially leaving in free agency, I would assume he will. I think that Penei Sewell is a no-brain draft pick here at number 5 as an absolute steal in my opinion, and it will really help Burrow develop and be more safe in that pocket and help those Bengals probably overtake maybe the Steelers in the division next year because the Steelers are going to be in a tough spot with their cap situation and all their free agents. Then we have the Eagles at 6. I don't think that they will make the same mistake they made last year. Last year they grabbed Reagor in the first round. Not that Reagor looked bad; he actually looked fairly good when he played, but they still need a lot of wide receiver help. And obviously Jefferson was still on the board, and I don't think that's something that they'll forget from last year. I think they're going to look at the board here, see that both Waddle and Chase are on the board, and think that that is just absolutely crazy helpful for them. I think they just go straight for Ja'Marr Chase. Like I said, I think it's very close between him and DeVonta Smith for which one of them is the best wide receiver in this draft class. I think the Eagles just go right for it there to help out either Hurts or Wentz, depending on who they end up starting at QB this year. Then you have the Lions here at 7. I think that the Lions at 7 are in a very interesting spot just because they have their top 2 receivers are both going into free agency, so they could definitely use a receiver. Normally, I would have given them a quarterback here. I probably would have given them like a Trey Lance or someone else, but as I said just last night, they made that big trade getting off of Stafford. They took in Goff and a couple of picks as well for the next 2 years. So I think here now that QB is no longer their biggest need, I think that they do go either wide receiver or defense. So their defense needs a lot of help too. But looking at the board again, I think that Waddle is a crazy good receiver. Obviously, he's coming off that injury, so that's going to be one good thing to watch. Is they'll have to kind of check on him throughout the spring here, see if he looks like he's back into regular shape, if his injury is going to be a liability at all for them. But I think they just go ahead and take Jalen Waddle right there, get that wide receiver of the future. I don't know. It sounds like there's multiple teams interested in both Golladay and Jones. I don't know if either of them are going to be coming back to the Lions, so they might have to take Waddle and then go find another veteran in free agency to bring in to pair with him. But Waddle will be a great addition for Goff to throw to, so he'll have some weapons outside of DeAndre Swift and TJ Hockenson. Next, you have the Panthers at 8. They are another team. There's a lot of teams here in this top 10, which is a fairly common theme usually. They could really use some extra quarterback help. Bridgewater played really well at the start of the season, and he really fell off. Part of it is obviously McCaffrey got hurt. They have a very young defense. They're giving up a lot of points, and he's playing from behind a lot of the time. But I think this is definitely a spot where they could use a linebacker. Micah Parsons, best linebacker on the board, is still there, but I think they could also use a QB of the future. I don't think Bridgewater is their long-term guy, so they could take Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. He's been playing very well in college. Obviously, coming from a smaller school, like unlike Clemson or a Ohio State, North Dakota State is not obviously known for those big quarterback prospects. That's going to be one thing they'll have to be careful about is just to make sure that bumping up to the NFL level, that Lance will be able to stay up to par with what they would expect from him. But I think that if he is on the board here at 8, they will take that pick. They will plan for the future there. I think they're going to take Trey Lance to develop alongside Bridgewater. Broncos at 9 are another team where potentially there's been a lot of talk that Drew Lock is not their guy. He obviously struggled a little bit this last year, but I also think a large part of that is just that, yeah, the defense was hurt again. Obviously, their offense was just real with injuries as well. They lost Sutton right away. Tight ends were rotating in and out. Like they had a lot of injury issues. I think Locke still has potential to be the guy. I think it's too early to get off of him without top tier quarterback left on the board here. I think that if the Panthers don't take Lance, potentially the Broncos will be interested in bringing him in, almost like a little bit of a QB competition between Locke and Lance to see who they want as their starter. But for now, we're going to avoid that. They do need that defensive help. Both corner and edge are huge needs for them, as you can see. And again, there are a couple of real high-end defensive players on this board. Surtain from Alabama has played amazing. He's a great corner. They really could use that help, as well as Caleb Farley out of Virginia. Farley has done great things there and really, really would be a huge addition to this team, as well as they could use some more pass rush, especially with Von Miller going through some of the things he's going through right now. There's no telling if he'll be back, and then just other injuries. They could definitely use some pass rush, and then Micah Parsons, like I said, is by far the best linebacker I think on the board. They could definitely go there too. But I think that here there's a chance they might cut AJ Bouye in the offseason here to save some money. They might lose Justin Simmons, their safety. They definitely need some secondary help. I'm going to go ahead and just give them Surtain out of Alabama. I think Surtain is a great pick for them and will help their defense and just especially their pass defense right away. I think it's a very necessary thing. And with that being said, I think too that the Cowboys, they definitely need secondary help. Obviously, you watch them get burned all season. I'm not even going to question this one. They're going to go for Farley then. I think both those teams, again, if the Broncos don't take a corner, I think Surtain goes to Cowboys, but I'm going to go ahead and say that they do take a corner, in which case the Cowboys are going to take Farley. The Giants, Len, are in a very interesting spot. They, again, need some defensive help. Their front seven actually played pretty well overall, but you see that does list their needs as edge and linebackers because they did have some struggles. They have a lot of big guys in there, but they weren't quite getting two quarterbacks the way they need to and everything, as well as they could use maybe some more wide receiver help as well, but there's really not a top end wide receiver left on the board. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is where I think that they will see Micah Parsons here on the board and think, man, he is a great pickup. I don't know how we could just not take him. So I think they're going to go right ahead and take Parsons. The Giants do like their linebackers. I think that the organization will look at Parsons and think that he fits their scheme really well. And then this is where it gets a little tough, I think, for San Fran. San Fran really needs corners, especially with Richard Sherman probably leaving in free agency. And they had a lot of injuries too last year. They could really use some corner help. But those top two guys I gave both to the Broncos and the Cowboys. So where do they go from here, Len? They definitely could use that corner help. Can't really get. They could maybe use some QB. Not going to get it here either. There's a couple really good edge rushers you can see and a tight end on the board, but those really are not needs of theirs. So I'm going to go ahead and say here, Len, you're looking at these offensive linemen here. There's three of them, and that's a need of theirs as well, as they could use a little more offensive line help to help protect Garoppolo or whoever they end up having at quarterback this season. And I think that the one that best fits what they are going for here, I'm going to go ahead and give them Rashawn Slater. I think Slater fits their scheme fairly well and would be a real help in that pass protection and the run protection as well. And as you know, they are a big running team, so I think that they definitely need that. Similarly here, I think that the Chargers, obviously, they could use a little bit of defensive help as well. They would love to get another corner, get another edge rusher in there, but they also really want to protect Justin Herbert. Herbert had a crazy good year, and they really do just need that. They need that help. And so I'm going to go ahead and say then that they're going to take Darrisaw here. I think Darrisaw is a great offensive lineman pick there out of Virginia. I think he will definitely help shore things up there and give Herbert all the protection he needs to have a really successful year too. And then we come to the Vikings. The Vikings obviously are my team, and the Vikings need a lot of help, honestly. If you didn't watch any Vikings games, our defense, we had like 7 rookies playing. We were struggling heavily. Our offensive line was giving up just tons of pressure to Kirk Cousins. He was getting sacked and hit left and right. So we could also use offensive linemen. But I think even more than offensive linemen, we really need some defensive help. I think our secondary will be better this year because both of our corners, we were playing 2 rookie corners last year. I think they'll both, especially with a better offseason program, hopefully they'll develop a little bit more. They'll give them a little more help. So I think that corner we can stay fine on here. I think that the best player on the board by far is Pitts for tight end out of Florida, but I think that we wouldn't take a tight end this high as much as even with Rudolph potentially leaving here after this year. I don't think it's worth us taking a tight end this high when we have other tight ends on our roster. So I think the best thing that really help us is to take Danielle Hunter, who's our all-star defensive end, and just pair him up with another guy that's just going to create havoc for opposing teams. So I think that the Vikings here are going to take Kwity Paye. I think he's the best edge rusher on the draft board, and he just so happened with the way this draft has gone for me so far here, he falls to the Vikings. Did not do that on purpose, I promise. I think that There's just a lot of teams that have other needs ahead of them that even though Kwity Paye might be better than some of the guys that are drafted ahead of them, there's just there's that team need where other teams are going to draft guys that are more needed for their team. Which then brings to the Patriots, who need all things offensive help. Their defense is still pretty good. They could always obviously use more defensive help. Any team can always use more defensive help, but they need receiving help. They need weapons for whoever their quarterback is, whether it's Cam Newton again, or if they are able to bring in like a Carson Wentz or a Philip Rivers on 1 year. I know he said that he's probably retiring, but you never know. Weirder things have happened. But I think this is a no-brainer. Kyle Pitts is a crazy good tight end. He can line up inside, outside. He can run block. Like, he can be used everywhere. So they can use him like a wide receiver as well, which will help them because they definitely need wide receiver help and tight end help. So he'll be just an all-out weapon for them. I think he's an absolute steal for the Patriots at 15. It might be one of those things where if he falls this far in the draft, I think that'll be the best draft pick the Patriots have made in the last couple of years by far. Cardinals are sitting at 16. Obviously, they're a team that was just short of the playoffs this year. Looked pretty good, but again, main problem for them, like a lot of these teams, was defense. They just did not have that great of a defense. They really could use some extra defensive help. They could really use corner help specifically. I think they need some better corners here. So we're going to go ahead and this is going to be the first time we're going to use this. We're just going to go right to the cornerbacks because there's one that really does stand out to me that I think would fit their scheme really well. I think that the Cardinals here at 16 should take J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. I think Horn would really help shore up their pass defense as much because they definitely need it. I'll bring back up the full board here. Oops. I just moved my screen. There we go. At 17 then, we have the Raiders. The Raiders are a team that they actually kind of shocked me this year. They did a lot better than I think a lot of people expected, including myself. But again, they have just a lot of issues both on offense and defense. They could just use some more help on both sides. But they definitely could use some defensive line help specifically in the pass rush there. I think the best guy on the board for them here is going to be Joseph Ossai. I think Ossai will really help them get after opposing quarterbacks, especially when they're in a division with some very hard quarterbacks to take down. I think that they need all the help they can get. So Joseph Ossai is going to go to the Raiders at 17. And now we're back with the Dolphins. They obviously already had their first pick, which they took a wide receiver, and that was from their trade with the Texans that they got that pick, and now this is their draft pick just from where they ended up. So they already got their wide receiver. So at this point, they can go a couple different ways here. They could take Samuel Cosmi, get some more protection for Tua or whoever ends up being their quarterback here. Otherwise, too, they could go ahead and get some more defensive help. They could take a running back here, and that's exactly what I think they're going to do here. There's a couple of really good running backs on the board. As you can see there, we have both Najee Harris and Travis Etienne that are both great running backs, could really help any team that really needs that extra run game, and I think that's exactly what the Dolphins need. I think they had a great defense this last year. They'll probably bring in one or two free agents on that side of the ball. So I think they should just go all-out offense this year, give Tua all the weapons he needs, because at that point, then they know if he can't get it done, they need to get a different quarterback. So I think give him all the weapons he needs, and I think that the best one on the board is Najee Harris. I think Najee Harris would be a great addition to their team. Then it brings us over to Washington. Washington is another really interesting one where they were in play, I know, for the Stafford. I know a report was just released, and they had offered at least one first-round pick for Stafford. So they're definitely looking for that QB. But as you can see, if I go over to the QB position here, they have both Kyle Trask and Mac Jones are on the board here. Both of them have shown flashes and could be good quarterbacks, but I do think that it is a little early for them to take either of them. I think they're still better off going out in free agency or in a trade to get a quarterback at this point. So I think their next best choice here would be to either get weapons for whatever quarterback they get or to protect I think their defense is outstanding. They could maybe use a little more secondary help, but there's really not a team on the board here or a player on the board here. As you can see, safety, like, ranks are in the 30s and 50s and stuff, but both Morgan Holland and even Grant have all been really good at safety, but just not worth taking this early. And then for cornerbacks. Both Stokes and Samuel are also really good. I think either of them could easily be taken in the first round. But I think Washington just has greater needs right now. I think that they should just go ahead and just get some more help for their quarterback. Obviously, they have Terry McLaurin right now, who's a great wide receiver, but after him, there's really not that next defining guy. I think they should go out and get Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. As a Minnesota fan, I watched him. I know plenty of NFL scouts have also said they've watched him at a lot of games, and he does put on a show. He's a good wide receiver, and I think that that's exactly what Washington needs. They need that one more offensive weapon to go along with their run game, and then with obviously McLaurin and then their tight ends, just to get some weapons for whatever quarterback they bring in. That brings us then to the Bears. The Bears, obviously, just like Washington, a team that just barely made the playoffs and then exited early just due to lack of a lot of needs. They're another team that really could use a QB, but there's just not that QB on the board that they would be smart to take. Obviously, I think especially after everything that's gone on with Trubisky, they don't want to make a mistake taking a quarterback too early again. So I think they will avoid that. They're another team that's probably going to look to free agency at maybe like a Jameis Winston. I don't think he would go there, but just a quarterback who you know can help you for a year or two maybe, and then go after another guy later in the draft or a bigger name free agent or just whatever you think it will take. But I don't think that they can do anything here. They could definitely use a wide receiver too. Robinson potentially leaving. I don't think that they'll be able to get him back. Honestly, I think he's kind of done with the team. So even if they make him an offer, I'm not sure he would come back. So wide receiver will be a big need for them. But even more so, I think their O-line could really use some help. Their O-line did not look good this last year. And with Cosme still on the board here, with the way everything's falling, I think they go ahead and they take the offensive linemen, shore up that offensive line, get them that help, and then hopefully help bring in a quarterback here. And then you have the Colts. The Colts were the team I was really sure up till last night were going to be making that huge play for Matt Stafford. Obviously, did not work out for them as the Rams went and got him first. So they still need a quarterback as well. They do have Eason that they drafted last year. I don't think he's probably their long-term starter, but they have him. I think they could easily go find another free agent QB. They have a great situation for a QB to come into. They have a good O-line. They have good weapons, a pretty good defense. So I think this is one of those situations where they're just going to look here and find the best player that really fits their needs with what they have left. I think that that is either another wide receiver to help them out or potentially defensive lineman as well, or even an offensive lineman would be a huge help for them. They obviously have some big defensive linemen. They have DeForest Buckner, who they traded their first round pick for last year. They have Justin Houston, who might be leaving in free agency. And with that being the case, I think that their best bet here would maybe be going with another defensive lineman. Their corners played all right. They could maybe use another corner, but again, at that corner position, I don't think there's a guy. Maybe Samuel would fit here, or maybe Stokes. I could see either of them being fine. But I think that they are a team that could bring in just free agent quarterbacks, not super expensive ones, and with the right pass rush, they could really get after just get after those opposing quarterbacks and force the throws to help out their corners. So I think that they go edge here and they go with Gregory Rousseau. Rousseau is a great edge rusher. I think that's exactly what they need. And then same thing here with the Titans. The Titans definitely could use that defensive line help. I think that they are going to be looking at that too, which is unfortunate for them when that Rousseau's out the board. I think Rousseau is a absolute steal right there. If he had fallen to the Titans, they definitely would have taken him. So looking at then all the guys who are left, there's a couple really good guys left here, but it might be a little early to take them. So in that case, let's just look at the interior D-line too, see who's left here. I think that Barmore is a great fit for them. He's a big run stopper. He can also get after the quarterback though. So I think that's where they're going to go in. They're going to go ahead and take Barmore. I think he's really going to help shore up that defensive line, and then they can go get a pass rusher either later in the draft or in free agency. Then the Jets are back on the board. This is the Jamal Adams pick from the Seahawks. So we already gave them a QB of the future. Now I think at this point they need just any help they can get all across the board. So I think when they look at the board, they see what can we really give our new quarterback to help him out here. and I think that they go ahead and they take the best offensive weapon left on the board. So I'm going to give them Travis Etienne out of Clemson there. I think they need a running back. They don't really have too much of a running game. So they're going to, obviously, they could use wide receivers as well, but at this point, I think it's going to be easier for them to go get some free agent wide receivers than to draft a guy right now. I don't think, outside of maybe Terrace Marshall, I don't think there's a guy that's really worth taking at that spot. So we'll go ahead and we will give them Etienne. Steelers, they are in a tough spot this offseason. They have a lot of free agents and a lot of negative cap. So this pick could really turn into anything just depending on who they end up cutting to save that cap space. I think they could definitely use some offensive line help. They could definitely use a running back, which we just gave Etienne to the Jets there. They could really use secondary help. They could use defensive line help. They could just use absolutely anything. I think here they do need some secondary help. They got Joe Hayden, who's an older corner that might be cut to save cap space because he's making quite a bit of money right now. So this is where I think that they are going to go ahead and take a corner. So I'm going to give them Asante Samuel. I think that he will fit what they do there fairly well. Obviously, the Stars, even no matter who they lose, they're still going to have a solid defense. I don't think they're going to completely take a huge step back when they have guys like T.J. Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick on that defense. But Asante Samuel should be able to jump right in and make an impact for them. Then we come back to the Jaguars here. Jaguars, again, lots of needs, but this is their second pick here, and we already gave them Trevor Lawrence. So at this point, I think this is where you make one of two different decisions. You give Lawrence protection with an O lineman, or you go ahead and give your defense a boost. I think that with the way that this is all played out, you got the offensive tackles. You got both Mayfield and Leatherwood are decent. They could make their way into the first round here, but nothing crazy. And for the interior O-line, they don't have as much of a need there, but Vera Tucker and Wyatt Davis have both been very good. I think either of them could easily be taken in the first round as well. But again, here, they definitely could use some defensive help too. And I think that with Stokes still on the board here, they could really use that corner help. So we're going to go ahead and give them Stokes for this draft. Coming up with the Browns obviously made huge jumps this year. They are a far better team this year than they've been any time recently, and I don't see any reason why they will fall off very large this year. I think that they have a lot to offer, so they should get some free agent help as well, as long as they can make their cap work. But I think definitely their front seven under defense is what can use the most help. Outside of Garrett, they don't really have another all-star guy there that can really push people around and get after guys, as well as they could use some linebacker help, and that's where I think that they will go here. I think they got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and Koramoah has been absolutely fantastic at Notre Dame. I think that he will fit right into that Browns defensive line, or not defensive line, defensive front seven there, and he will make an immediate impact, really help sure things up, both in the run game and pass protection. And I think that he will fit in perfectly and help them take things to the next level. Then you have the Ravens. The Ravens, definitely a great team, do have some needs though, and I think that they are going to be a team again where their pick is really going to depend. I know they've already cut a couple guys from the team, and I'm sure they're going to continue to cut a few more or trade some more. So this pick will probably change throughout the couple mock drafts that I do, but we're just going to go ahead and give them, I think, the best player for their needs on the board, which I'm going to go ahead and give them Elijah Vera Tucker here. Give them that interior O-line help, protect Jackson, help with the run game, do what they do best. So we'll go ahead and do that. Saints are another one, just like the Steelers. They have a lot of negative cap and a lot of guys are going to be moving. So until we know exactly what they're going to do to try and fix their cap space, this pick is really going to be kind of all over the board. But again, I think I'm just going to give them the best defensive player on the board here, just because they definitely are going to need some defensive help after this year, I'm sure, between free agents and cutting guys. So we're going to give them Zaven Collins, great linebacker out of Tulsa. I think he'll fit in well there. They also do have Zach Bond, who they drafted last year, which Bond could take a huge step up. And if that's the case, then they might go someplace else, but we'll give them Zaven Collins for now. Packers, I think this one's a no-brainer for them. They cannot get out of this draft with either a top corner, if there's one on the board, or a wide receiver in the first round. I think if they do anything other than those two, there's going to be a lot of problems with both Packers fans and players. So best player left on the board that fits that is Terrace Marshall. LSU receiver, I think he's going to definitely make an immediate impact there. Give Rodgers another weapon that is not Davante Adams to throw to. The Bills, of course, the Bills got very close, but they were taken out by the Chiefs. They are going to need probably a little bit more defensive help again with between free agents and other stuff as well. They could use an offensive tackle too, because they have, I believe, 2 linemen that are free agents, and it's unsure if they're going to re-sign one or both of them or not. So just looking at what's going on here, there are a couple of good offensive linemen left on the board. They could definitely go with one of these guys here. They could easily take a linebacker too. They still have Nick Bolton here on the board, and Bolton would really help them out as well. And again, I think corner would be their biggest need to pair up someone with Trey White, but there's really not a corner that's worth taking here. I think at the end of the first, with the way this mock draft has fallen. And although all these tackles would definitely fit in, I think they can easily take a tackle in the second round that would do the same thing as any of these guys. So I'm going to go ahead and give them Bolton. I think Bolton would fit in well, pair up with those linebackers they currently have, as well as if Matt Milano, who is a free agent, ends up leaving the team, I think that will really help their defense and give them just that one more extra step they need. And then we have our 2 Super Bowl teams here. The Chiefs are obviously favorites, so they're going to have the 32nd pick here for now. And the second mock draft here, when that game has actually happened, we'll know for sure which one of them gets the last pick and which one gets the 31st. For now, the Bucs have the 31st. They definitely are probably going to need some defensive line help after this season. They have a couple free agents, potentially wide receiver too. Both Antonio Brown and Godwin are both free agents, but they do have guys like Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller, as well as they shouldn't have any problem attracting free agents if Brady stays in the team. I think what the best thing that we can do for them right now would just be to give them the best defensive lineman that's on the board here. So we have Jalen Phillips here, who's an edge. We can give him there. Or we have Azeez Ojulari, who's been very good as well. Because we have both Shaq. I think Shaq Barrett for sure is a free agent. Then Pierre Paul might have just 1 year left on his contract. So that might be a good move as well. And I think that's where I'm going to go. I think I'm going to give them Azeez Ojulari. I think he fits exactly what they do really well. And especially if they do lose Shaq, I think that they really will want that guy to kind of be his replacement. And then we have the final pick here. I think that this one, obviously with the Chiefs being here, they are always getting free agents, always restructuring contracts. They are very good at keeping their team under wraps and making things work. They list wide receiver as their top need. I think that they will be just fine at wide receiver again through either free agency or with the guys they already have. We could give them Kadarius Toney. Tony's been a really good wide receiver out of Florida. That way, when they lose Watkins, they have another guy. Otherwise, they could use interior O-line, although we just have a couple tackles left on the board right here, which they could potentially use as well. For the sake of the argument here, I know tackle is a big need for just any team. You can always upgrade that offensive line. So we will just go ahead and we will give them Jalen Mayfield just to wrap up the draft here. So you can see in here we have all of our picks that we made. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments any of the picks that you liked or didn't like and what your reasoning was there. Like I said, I will have multiple drafts coming out here this spring as things continue to change, and potentially I might bring in a friend or two on some of them as well, just to either get a second discussion or we can both do one at the same time and see how ours differ. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this mock draft. Go ahead and drop a like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and we will see you all next time.